What's up, my friends? How's it going today? Well, I don't have any special clickbait for you. I don't have any fancy editing. I don't have any background music. I don't have any intense sound effects. I don't have a green screen. And I don't have producers. So my videos are going to be basically me talking on camera, as they always have been. So getting that out of the way, prepare for my ramble. I've got a lot of things on my mind all the time, and that's because I like to think. Some people seem to think that that's a burden, that a person thinks a lot. I don't feel that way at all. The more thinking I do, the more I can sort through. If you consider deep thinking like organizing papers, then you realize that in order to organize those papers, you have to pull out all the boxes off all the shelves. You have to throw them and scatter them all over the floor. And for a while it's going to be twice the chaos. But once you're done and they're filed away, it's a much cleaner existence. And that's a perfect metaphor for learning about life and surroundings. If you start to step outside your box in life and learn about the things that are actually going on in the world, you see that it's a mess, okay? The more you look at that mess, the more you're able to untangle that string. There's another metaphor for you. The mess of the world is like a ball of twine. Once you get started, it can seem like it's going to be impossible to untangle. But the more you untangle, the easier it becomes to find the ends and to find those threads, and eventually everything's straightened out. And when I was younger, I became a little obsessive about conspiracy theories. For a while, I was very much anti-everything, anti-establishment, right? And it wasn't until I had several conversations in just recent years with educated people who would say, but if you don't approve of this, then what is your alternative? And I would think about it and say, well, you have a point. I don't have one. And if I don't have an alternative to the current paradigm, then all I'm doing is pissing in the wind. Nobody cares about opinions about what's wrong if there's nothing right to fix it with. And I think that was one of the epic realizations that I had in my life, was that if it isn't broke, don't fix it. But if it is broke, don't complain about it unless you know how to fix it. And that doesn't mean that a person can't complain because things are messed up. And that's not what I'm trying to say. I think we could all agree that we have a right to voice our frustration and our displeasure with things that are not right. But when we think about it deeper, we have to understand why these things happen. And we could take large issues like, say, immigration. And it's easy for someone to say, yeah, just deport all the Mexicans and Muslims. They think that that's going to solve their problem, whether it be their own personal monetary problem or whatever it may be. There are reasons for it. I think the economy is kind of used as a playbook to get people behind, movements and ideas that may not necessarily even be impacted by the economy or impact the economy at all. Whereas a lot of them do, but not in ways we can understand. And this is what I'm saying, is that it's very complicated, the way that the whole system works. Like when I had a discussion with somebody earlier who said that they thought that I supported taxes completely. And I said, no, I don't support taxation on independent wages or living wages. I support taxes on various processes and various sales and particular items in commerce, because of issues, for example, like the one I made, which was, if we're not taxed on gasoline, let's just say that everybody's free to take what they want, and a gasoline tanker crashes in the freeway, and the person who is the owner of that company refuses to clean it up. Well, no amount of fines or forcing or jail time is going to happen. You could send the guy to jail, but all that's going to do is cost taxpayers more money to pay for the jails. So without taxes, you can't pay for the jails, you can't pay for the roads, you can't pay for the extra things to clean up. When there are messes like that, and this is why we have a system, and what I'm saying there is that things are always more complicated than just cut and dry, this should or shouldn't be true. And the more that I've delved into trying to find evidence for the things that I used to believe were wrong in the world, the more I started to understand that the system that's in play isn't necessarily created by a them, a shadow government, or an Illuminati, or any particular factions. It's as if I could think of a metaphor, I'd love to find one, but, you know, it's like the ball's in play, and you can't catch it, but you can shove it a certain direction, or, you know, it's, let me think of it before it just completely makes no sense to you at all. We can't necessarily drive the world towards one goal. It's impossible. There's far too many people and far too many ideas. So all we can do is nudge people towards our ideals, and this is what the shadow governments and the banking cartels have been doing for a long time, is shoving society towards making more money and profits for them. And there's a lot of greed and there's a lot of corruption, and it's easy to get caught up in that. But the more you obsess over it, the more you think about it, about things that are out of your circle of, well, there's the circle of concern, and then there's the circle of influence, which was something I was learning about the other day, which was a good one to think of. You know, the circle of concern are things that you may be concerned about but you can't change, such as worrying about global warming. It's not going to do you any good to worry about global warming, and it doesn't matter how much you recycle as an individual, it's not going to change it. You just have to realize that we as a whole are hoping that if we change our ways, it may curb it a little bit. But there's huge debates and arguments over how effective it is. It doesn't matter. What matters is to see that things are happening and to do the best you can, but not let it affect you on a daily basis. If you spend your whole day crying about global warming, it'll go nowhere. That's your circle of concern. Your circle of influence is the circle of people that you talk with, the circle of ideas and subjects that you're well, versed in, as well as the things that you can actually change. And we usually reach out and try to change things that we feel we can impact. I'm not a super active, activist type person, but I speak out whenever something affects me. And it's difficult to speak out on things that don't affect me because I don't have the same passion. So obviously, like this Curating ban has got me motivated because I think it's something that's not right. And there are a lot of other people out there with different viewpoints on it. And instead of hissing at each other, what we should do is say, what is the consensus reality on this? And it's something that really I was thinking about, that when I first started this video, that I really wanted to title it as like, how do you know that you're happy? How do you know that you're doing okay? It's really easy to compare yourself to previous times in your life. So if you're doing completely shitty, and in previous times in your life you've been doing completely shitty, well, by comparison, you may feel all right. When I suffered my sciatica, it went on for about, it was really bad for about 2 or 3 years. And I have completely blocked that part out. I remember my kids growing up, as they were, babies, and lifting them up and doing all the normal things, but I blocked out the times when I couldn't lift my kids. And when I couldn't lift my own baby because my back hurt so bad, and I thought, as a dad, I'll never be able to lift my children. And I pushed that suffering out. And I remember the good times. This is something that we just do. It's part of our natural defense against suffering, I guess, is that we can block out negativity. But some people latch onto it, and they hang on to it, and they're obsessed over it. It's their parents' fault that they're not doing good in life. It's their teacher's fault. They didn't get enough schooling, or they were forced to do too much schooling. It comes to a point where you just got to shut up, stop blaming, and take accountability for your own life. And this goes for all of us. I don't blame anybody for where I'm at. I don't blame anybody for my addictions. I don't blame anybody for my shortcomings. I don't blame anybody for, the problems that I face except myself, because I know that I'm the one who's causing them. It's a fact. It doesn't mean that external influences don't affect me, but how you deal with those is where you see the gold. This is the mental alchemy, transmutation, turning gold into super gold. You can find a good situation to make it even better. But turning lead into gold is merely looking at a bad situation and saying, well, what can I learn from this? And I always come back to something Manly Hall said, that if you can't find the good in any bad situation, you're not looking hard enough. And I think that goes without saying, but it has to be said because a lot of people don't. I surround myself as much as I can with people who I respect, and people who respect me, and people that I can talk about things with. I have friends that are not into any of the same stuff as I am, but we share the same values. And I have friends that are into all the same stuff as I am, but don't have the same values. I have friends who you would never even think that I would be friends with, and I'm not friends with people you would think that I would want to be friends with. You know, I was kind of a... Sure, some people are like, oh, you're a hippie, or you're this, or a hipster. Or somebody called me a hipster the other day. I'm like, no, I'm not a hipster. But I guess you could call me that if you want to. He says, you live in Portland, you have a beard, you're a hipster. I was like, okay, whatever. But labels are just another thing that we put on each other. It's just stupid. But I used to wear a lot of tie-dyes, and I had that hippie type attitude. And when I was younger, I was like, it's all good. It's all good. But I still hung on to that aggro side of myself, because I realized that as humans, we have to embrace our darkness. So I could be out there in a tie-dye and long hair, headbanging to some Slayer, get the aggressions out. And I just feel like so many people lean too far in one direction or another. Either they're too peaceful or they're too hateful. And that's what I mean when the people and the friends that I've kept and the company that I've tried to keep over the years have been the people who I believe are stable-minded enough to hold a conversation, and people who have yearning and desire to be good people in their lives. And a lot of folks make the choice to surround themselves with very bad people. And then they wonder why they keep getting themselves in trouble. They have a really good friend who's always in trouble, but they're such good friends, they grew up together. I had to completely abandon some of my friends from childhood, because, I should say from my teen years, because they got themselves in trouble and got other people in trouble. But mostly because they made bad decisions in their life, and I didn't want to be part of that. And at a point you want to stand up and say, hey, can I help you? But they don't want to be helped. And who are we to say we can help them anyway? But I guess what I'm trying to get at here is that many of the situations we find ourselves in that are bad situations in our life, they're almost always our own fault. Bad choice, You end up losing your job. Well, you took a job knowing you could lose it, or, you lose a bunch of money and you're all disappointed. But if you hadn't had the money in the first place to lose, would it have affected you as much? I could think of a million examples, but I think you know where I'm going with it, that it's all perspective. And it's really easy for us to just get ourselves into trouble by putting ourselves in situations. And I guess to say, I should add that one thing to remember is if you don't ever try, you'll never succeed. Or should I say, I can't remember how the quote goes, but it says, nobody's ever been disappointed in failure. They're always disappointed in never trying. And that means that I'm not saying that we should just hide under a blanket and not surround ourselves with anything that can endanger us. That's totally the opposite. I say we march headlong right into it and just say whatever happens, happens, and just let it go. Life is too short to worry. It's really hard to look back and think, how could I have been, or how did I feel at this time? Because we really don't remember. And we have a very skewed view on who we really were, We're all changing constantly. What really matters is when you set all the bullshit aside, when you're by yourself and you're sitting there thinking, how do you feel? You can prove yourself all day long, and you can troll people on the internet, or you can gripe about work, or you can gripe about the news, or what's going on, or your haircut, or your new shoes, or whatever it might be. But they're all very small problems compared to something like back pain where you can't get out of bed, when you feel like you're going to die, or, losing a parent or a husband or a wife. All of those things are very effective, and I think a lot of people have been lucky in that they haven't been affected by anything hardcore in their life. And I'll tell you something, it seems like most of the people that are the most arrogant, spiteful, and hurtful, and hateful on, say, the internet, are the kind of people who have never had any real experiences in their lives. Nothing's ever really happened to them. Because the people who have suffered understand suffering, and they're able to have empathy for people who have been there. But on the same token, there are people who have suffered so much in their lives that they insist on making everybody else around them suffer too. So I think it's important that we do suffer because we learn, but if we suffer too much, we cannot let it break us, because there's a lot of hate out there. I don't pay attention to it. I don't obsess over it. I don't let it get me down ever. I'm a very positive person. When I'm walking down the street, I'm looking at the leaves, I'm looking at the sun, I'm really enjoying the day, like, wow, this is awesome. But I'm not thinking about somebody who said a bad comment to me online, or, something that I'm supposed to be doing or I wish I would have done when I was younger. I don't hold regrets and I don't hold grudges. I just move on. And that makes me happy. And that's why I want to share that idea, because I think everybody can be happy if they just stop fretting over the petty shit. But alas, to each his own, right? We all try and we're all doing our best. Well, no, that's not true. Some of us are trying and we're doing our best, and some of us aren't trying very hard at all. So my point would be to keep away from the ones who aren't trying, because they're only endangering themselves and people around them. So if you have one part of your circle of influence that's negative or affected negatively, you got to push it out and let it go. I think we can all work together to make a better world. And I have positive and negative days. We all do. But these days I don't really have any negative days. I'll have just moments where I may be frustrated. But I've learned to completely let that go. And I'm so much happier because of it. I don't get the butterflies in my stomach anymore. I don't get the anxiety. No anxiousness towards life. Just let it roll. A little bit of anxiety is good, but too much will kill you. Talk to y'all later.